The Hayride Incident, October 11th, 2014, Mechanic Falls, Maine. 17-year-old Cassidy Charette and several of her classmates arrived at Harvest Hill Farm for a night of Halloween fun. They came to experience the Gauntlet, a popular haunted hayride attraction. Cassidy was a top student at Messalonsky High School. She ranked first in her class of 244. She was also a varsity soccer player and volunteer. It was supposed to be a night of harmless scares. The ride used a 1979 Jeep CJ5 to pull a flatbed trailer filled with over 20 passengers through a dark cornfield. As the Jeep began descending a hill, something went wrong. The driver lost control. The trailer flipped. Passengers were thrown through the air. Cassidy and her friends were thrown violently from the wagon. 22 people were injured. Cassidy's injuries were the most severe. She died at the scene. Investigators discovered shocking negligence. The Jeep's rear brakes didn't work at all. The front brakes barely functioned. The vehicle was towing more than double its safe limit. Brake fluid was missing. Critical parts had been removed or installed incorrectly. Employees had warned the owner, Peter Bolduc, that the Jeep's brakes were failing. They told him to junk it. He ignored the warnings. The vehicles went years without maintenance. In November 2016, Harvest Hill Farm pleaded guilty to felony charges of aggravated driving to endanger. Cassidy's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit, which settled in 2017. The settlement funds helped establish the Shine On Cass Foundation, supporting youth and community causes in Cassidy's name. The Cold Case, October 30th, 1975, Greenwich, Connecticut. It was the night before Halloween, Mischief Night, a time when local kids played harmless pranks, ringing doorbells, throwing toilet paper, and covering lawns in shaving cream. 15-year-old Martha Moxley left her home in the quiet Bellhaven neighborhood just after 9 p.m. She was excited to spend the evening with friends. Martha had moved to Greenwich from California only a year earlier. She was popular, funny, outgoing, and well-liked by everyone. That night, she joined a group of teenagers at the Skakel home across the street. Witnesses said she spent time talking and flirting with 17-year-old Thomas Skakel, the son of a wealthy local family. Around 9:30 p.m., the two were seen near the backyard fence by the pool. Moments later, Martha walked off into the darkness. She never made it home. The next morning, October 31st, 1975, her mother realized she hadn't returned. Neighbors began searching. Just before noon, a family friend discovered Martha's body beneath a large tree in her own backyard. Near her body were pieces of a broken 6-iron golf club. She had been beaten and stabbed with it. Police traced the club back to the Skakel residence. It came from a set owned by the family. The case immediately drew national attention. The Skakels were relatives of Ethel Kennedy, the widow of Senator Robert F. Kennedy. For decades, the case went cold. Then, in 2000, 25 years later, Michael Skakel, Thomas's younger brother, was arrested. He was 15 at the time of the murder. In 2002, he was convicted of Martha's murder and sentenced to 20 years to life. But in 2018, the Connecticut Supreme Court overturned the conviction. And on October 30th, 2020, exactly 45 years after the crime, the state announced it would not retry him. The murder of Martha Moxley remains officially unsolved. The Wrong Door Incident, October 17th, 1992, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. 16-year-old Yoshihiro Hattori, an exchange student from Japan, was heading to a Halloween party with his American host brother, Webb Haymaker. It was only 2 months since Yoshi had arrived in the U.S. He dressed in a white tuxedo, imitating John Travolta from Saturday Night Fever. Around 8 p.m., they drove to the address on the invitation. But they stopped at the wrong house. They rang the bell. No one answered. As they turned to leave, the homeowner's wife saw them through the window. She shouted, "Rodney, get your gun!" Her husband, Rodney Pierce, grabbed a .44 Magnum and stepped outside. He pointed it at Yoshi and yelled, "Freeze!" Yoshi didn't understand. He smiled and took a step forward. Pierce fired once. The bullet hit Yoshi in the chest. He died in the ambulance minutes later. Police released Pierce, calling it self-defense. But after protest from Japan's government, he was charged with manslaughter and later acquitted. Halloween Hanging, October 30th, 2005, Frederica, Delaware. It was the night before Halloween, a quiet street in a small Delaware town. Most homes were covered in fake cobwebs, lights, and hanging decorations. That evening, a 42-year-old woman walked to a tree behind her home. She tied a rope around a thick branch, stepped off a stool, and hung herself. When morning came, the sun rose over the neighborhood. People walked by on their way to work. Children headed to school. No one stopped. They thought it was a Halloween prop. For nearly 12 hours, she hung there, motionless. Neighbors waved at each other, passing beneath the tree. A few even joked about how realistic the decoration looked. By early afternoon, one local resident finally noticed something was wrong. They called 911. When police arrived, they confirmed it wasn't a decoration. It was a body. The scene was horrifying. A woman dead in plain sight, mistaken for art. The Candyman. October 31st, 1974, Pasadena, Texas. It was Halloween night. The streets were filled with trick-or-treaters. The weather was cold and misty. Ronald O'Brien walked with his two children, 8-year-old Timothy and 5-year-old Elizabeth. With them were their neighbor Jim Bates and his two kids. At one house, the children knocked. No one answered. They ran ahead to the next home. O'Brien stayed behind for a moment. A few minutes later, he caught up, holding 5 giant pixie sticks. He said the man inside the dark house had finally opened the door and given him the candy. That night, back home, Timothy asked if he could have one piece of candy before bed. His parents agreed. He chose the pixie stick. After one taste, he said it was bitter. O'Brien gave him Kool-Aid to wash it down. Within minutes, Timothy began screaming in pain. He vomited and started convulsing. O'Brien carried him and ran for help, but Timothy died in the ambulance. Tests showed the pixie stick contained potassium cyanide, enough to kill 3 adults. Police questioned neighbors. The man from the dark house was ruled out. He had been working that night, with over 200 witnesses. Attention turned to Ronald O'Brien. He was over $100,000 in debt and had held 21 jobs in 10 years. Just months earlier, he had secretly taken out $10,000 life insurance policies on both of his children. Investigators found he had been visiting chemical stores, asking about cyanide and lethal doses. O'Brien had hidden the poisoned pixie sticks inside his raincoat sleeves. He handed them to his own children, and 3 others, to make it look random. The jury took 46 minutes to convict him. Ronald O'Brien was sentenced to death. On March 31, 1984, he was executed by lethal injection. The Halloween prank. 31st October 1957, California. It was Halloween night. 15-year-old John Jack Cheney and his friends were out for fun. At one house, they decided to play a prank. Jack put on a white mask and hid behind a bush. When his friend, 16-year-old Jerry, walked by, Jack jumped out, screaming to scare him. But Jerry wasn't laughing. He had a .38 revolver with him, a gun he carried for protection after reports of thefts in the area. Startled and panicked, he fired. The bullet struck Jack in the head. He fell instantly. When police arrived, they found the gun still in Jerry's hand, shaking. He told them he thought it was a real attacker. Jack was pronounced dead at the scene. The prank had lasted only 3 seconds. No charges were filed. It was ruled an accident.